With the fifth and final season of Stranger Things just days away, I think now's the perfect time to talk about how we got here. It's kind of wild when you think about it. The show that kicked off the nostalgia boom in 2016 is ending right as nostalgia fatigue has seemingly hit and audiences seem completely over the trend. When Stranger Things first dropped, it didn't just remind people of the 80s, it ignited a full-blown Hollywood obsession with the past. Suddenly, every new show wanted to look, sound, and feel like something that already exists. For nearly a decade, you just throw together a group of weirdos, usually led by Finn Wolfhard, blast a synth score, plan out 2 or 3 visual reenactments, and boom, instant, if not fleeting, viewership. But here's the thing, while plenty of projects borrowed the idea, few ever captured the feeling. The Duffer Brothers didn't just recreate the movies they loved, they reimagined them. Because in my opinion, what the Duffers did wasn't simple imitation. They weren't just tracing over the past, they were building a collage. They took the building blocks of their favorite childhood films and reassembled them into something that felt familiar but new. This show isn't portraying the reality of the 1980s, it's attempting to capture how 80s cinema made you feel, and the Duffers have been pretty explicit about it. Every villain, every outfit, every location is carefully curated from the media that shaped them. Suspense, wonder, friendship, terror, each piece pulled from the past is layered together, creating a composite that's greater than the sum of its parts. At its core, Stranger Things isn't just a love letter to classic cinema, it's a carefully constructed collage, blending Spielberg's wonder, Carpenter's dread, and King's small-town weirdness, all filtered through a modern lens. So, to celebrate the end of an era, let's go back through the first 4 seasons and break down the cinematic DNA that props them up, from Close Encounters to A Nightmare on Elm Street and everything in between. In a world where everything was already ripping off ideas from the past way before 2016, is Stranger Things really that unoriginal? Or maybe, is it just the one that does it the best and everybody else should stop trying? I'm Colton from Nostalgia Mode, and these are the cinematic inspirations behind Stranger Things. And spoiler warning going forward if you haven't seen the show, which, at this point, what are you doing? Season 1. While each season has a smorgasbord of cinematic influences, it's hard to watch Season 1 and not see Steven Spielberg's E.T. the Extraterrestrial as the core building block here. In many ways, Stranger Things is a symbolic cultural successor to E.T., bringing the ideas of found family, childhood adventure, the clash between imagination and authority, and the loss of innocence into a modern streaming-era context. The parallels between these two are undeniable, especially on the 11 side of the narrative. In E.T., we follow a mostly non-verbal alien with telekinetic powers who befriends a 12-year-old Elliot and his friends and family. The kids hide E.T. from their parents and government authorities while forming a deep emotional bond and trying to help get E.T. home, all within a quaint, seemingly safe suburban town, riding bikes and indulging in Reese's Pieces. In the first season of Stranger Things, we meet a mostly non-verbal girl with superpowers named Eleven, who befriends a 12-year-old Mike Wheeler as she escapes government experimentation. Mike and his friends Dustin and Lucas hide her in Mike's basement away from his parents and shady government authorities while forming a deep bond, though here Mike and Eleven end up making out, which now that I say it, kind of wish E.T. and Elliot did as well. The gang spends the season trying to keep Eleven safe and using her powers to help find their missing friend Will around their small suburban town of Hawkins, Indiana. Bikes again are the main mode of transport, and Eleven develops a love for Eggo waffles. More than just reference for reference sake, Stranger Things and E.T. revolve around ordinary kids in suburban settings encountering something extraordinary, something only they are uniquely capable of understanding and handling. Adults, hardened by fear and life experience, can't or won't see the reality of the situation, and would obviously treat the outsider of the story with skepticism rather than respect, and more likely than not end up turning them over to the shady authorities. Only a child has the bravery and, honestly, the naivety to challenge authority and protect what matters. The Duffer Brothers explore E.T.'s core idea, the power of friendship and accepting those who are different across the first season. These plots are coming-of-age stories at heart, showing the kids navigating complex situations that test their courage and bonds.
She's doing it. She's finding him.
This is crazy. Calm down. She just closed her eyes. Oh, holy.
Spielberg's visual style is everywhere here as well. The Duffers clearly went to the E.T. well, borrowing low-angle shots to frame the world through a child's eyes, wide shots of suburban streets and forests to create scale and practical lighting. Oh my god, the flashlights, the foggy nighttime streetlights, it's all there to build suspense and a sense of childlike wonder.
Wow, she looks
Pretty. Good.
But the 11 story is only half of the narrative. The Byers family's mission is to reach the Upside Down and rescue Will, which clearly draws heavily from Steven Spielberg's other masterpiece, Jaws. Jim Hopper channels Chief Brody in attitude and visuals. His truck, his clothes, his persona, it's all pretty overt. And the Demogorgon is also deliberately designed to function like the shark from Jaws. It's a patient predator dragging its prey down into its home. The original series was even going to be set in Montauk, which happens to be the filming location for Jaws, little did you know, before Hawkins became the final setting of the show. Beyond E.T. and Jaws, Season 1 also borrows from classics like Stand By Me with its grounded, imperfect kids on a dangerous adventures, or The Goonies, giving the group heart, humor, and charm, or Firestarter, with a young girl hunted for her psychic abilities. It's all here. Season 1 is mostly about establishing these kids, their friendships, and their personalities, and the Duffers carefully chose movies that excelled in that aspect, picking films that centered on children on adventures as the backbone of their story, and it worked. The combination of adventure, suspense, and heart made the show a hit and turned its young cast into household names. Of course, as any long-running coming-of-age story shows, think Harry Potter for example, the kids grow, the stakes rise, and the world gets darker to match, and that's exactly where Season 2's inspirations come into play. Season 2. Now, admittedly, it's a little harder to pin down one big overarching direct inspiration for Season 2. Part of that's because so many of these cinematic influences kind of bleed across seasons, and part of it's because once Season 1 laid the foundation, the Duffers had way more freedom to branch out and build their own thing. They could start picking and choosing from a much wider variety of influences. That said, I think the biggest and most distinct inspiration this time around is The Exorcist. No, hold on, I know what you're thinking, but Colton, The Exorcist came out in the 70s, Stranger Things only borrows from the 80s. To which I say, shut up. The Duffers have always been clear that their influences come from the movies that inspired them growing up, not just the ones that happened to be made during the Reagan era, and The Exorcist is definitely one of these. In The Exorcist, a young girl named Reagan becomes possessed by a supernatural force in Pazuzu that invades her body and her home. Her behavior turns violent and unrecognizable, medicine fails to explain what's happening, and her desperate mother is forced to abandon reason in a last-ditch effort to save her child. The film climaxes in an intense exorcism as family and faith collide against something beyond human comprehension. Now swap out the demon for the Mind Flayer, and you've basically got Stranger Things 2. Will Byers becomes possessed by a dark, incomprehensible force that slowly takes over his mind and body. His behavior changes, the doctors can't help, and Joyce Byers spirals into pure desperation, trying everything from medical tests to space heaters to save her son. It all leads to an exorcism of its own, with Will tied to a bed, convulsing, the lights flickering, and his family literally burning the creature out of him. The parallels here are almost beat for beat. Both stories use possession as a metaphor for the loss of innocence, and both take place in a suburban home that's supposed to feel safe, but becomes ground zero for the horror about to take place. But what's really clever is how the Duffers reinterpret The Exorcist's core ideas for their own world. Where the original Exorcist was about faith versus doubt, Stranger Things reframes it as warmth versus cold, both literally and emotionally. The Mind Flayer thrives in the cold, detached, lifeless space of the Upside Down, with the only thing that can drive it out being love, connection, and community. It's a spiritual battle reimagined for a world without any priests in it, where friendship and family take the place of faith and prayer. Even the visual language borrows from The Exorcist. It's got cold, flickering lights, quiet tension-building takes, and claustrophobic close-ups of Will in a hospital that make the ordinary feel very, very uncomfortable. The Duffers trade out priests for parents and demons for interdimensional monsters, but the DNA is the same. Obviously, it's not just The Exorcist on display in Season 2. Season 2 also throws in some lighter nods, like Gremlins, where Dustin's adorable new pet Dart turns from aw to oh fuck really fast. And there's also that Close Encounters of the Third Kind influence in Will's hallucinatory visions, including one shot that's basically a frame-for-frame recreation of Spielberg's iconic doorway moment. And of course, there's the Ghostbusters stuff, not just in their Halloween costumes, which look great, but in the spirit of the gang. It's a bunch of lovable nerds teaming up to take on something strange in the neighborhood.
Yeah, but he's so cool. If he's cool, then you be Winston.
I can't.
Why not?
Because
Because you're not black?
I didn't say that.
Season 2 might not have one singular cinematic blueprint like the first season, but that's kind of the point. By this stage, the show was evolving. It's growing up with its characters and pulling from a broader range of influences to create something that felt darker, more mature, and a bit scarier. Season 3. Out of all of its seasons, Stranger Things 3 is easily the hardest to pin down one big cinematic inspiration for. This thing is a blender full of 80s pop culture. It's pulling from Magnum P.I. with Hopper doing his best Tom Selleck impression. It's pulling from Fast Times at Ridgemont High with the Starcourt Mall, and it's pulling basically everything early Cronenberg for good measure. But the more I've rewatched it, the clearer it's become that Season 3 is absolutely drenched in Cold War era paranoia horror, and there's 3 films in particular that form its thematic background: The Thing, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and The Blob. Let's start with John Carpenter's 1982 masterpiece, The Thing. That film's all about paranoia, mistrust, the loss of identity, and the terror of assimilation, all of which drive the Mind Flayers storyline in Season 3. The Mind Flayers' new tactic here in Season 3 of infecting and controlling human hosts directly mirrors The Thing's shape-shifting alien that replaces its victims. And like The Thing, the fear doesn't just come from the monster's incredible visuals, it's from not knowing who you can trust. Anyone in Hawkins could be one of them. The gooey, gross, disgusting body horror visuals, the melting, the merging, the reforming of the flayed is pure Carpenter and Cronenberg. Those transformation scenes echo The Thing's grotesque practical effects, just updated with some of the most impressive CGI on TV. Seriously, say what you will about the Netflix model for TV and how it fucked up the industry and whatever, but Season 3 of Stranger Things looks fucking incredible, and it's pretty amazing that we routinely get TV now that looks this cinematic. But I digress. Thematically, both stories of The Thing and Stranger Things 3 explore dehumanization, how people lose their individuality and morality once they're consumed by something larger than themselves. Billy's slow possession under the Mind Flayer mirrors the infected crew in The Thing. It's a transformation that's as psychological as it is physical.
You shouldn't have looked for me. Because now I see you. Now we can all see you.
But while The Thing sets the tone for paranoia and isolation, the infection spreading across Hawkins feels a little bit closer to the 1978 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The concept of the flayed, with all the townspeople unknowingly taking over and turning into obedient vessels, is straight from Body Snatchers. Both stories are about realizing that your friends, your family, and your neighbors aren't themselves anymore. It's horror born from the familiar turning very, very unfamiliar. The Duffers used that idea to comment on conformity and mass consumerism in the 80s, the possessed acting like hive-minded drones, which ties perfectly to the Starcourt Mall setting, which is eating up all the small businesses in Hawkins. The whole flayed subplot. Why can't I say that? The whole flayed subplot feels like a twisted metaphor for 80s consumer culture, people losing individuality in service of a bigger, mindless system. And on a meta level, it's a commentary on nostalgia itself, how repetition and imitation can hollow out meaning. Though, to be fair, Season 3 might actually be guilty of the thing that I'm claiming it's commenting on. It's kind of, Season 3 veers more into the member berries territory than the tight homages of Season 1 and 2. I'm looking directly at you, new Coke scene.
It's like Carpenter's The Thing. The original is the classic, no question about it. But the remake?
Well, now that's a little too much.
But once the infection plot reaches full kaiju mode, those influences shift again, and that's where The Blob oozes in. The Blob is your classic small-town monster movie. A giant gelatinous mass crashes to Earth and starts devouring everything in its path. The Mind Flayers Season 3 form is this pulsating, flesh-colored nightmare that rolls around and squishes through the sewers in a very similar fashion to the Blob. It's really gross. It grows by absorbing people and turning them into more of itself, exactly like the Blob did without all the pink, obviously. Visually and thematically, both stories turn the small town into a nightmare zone. An all-American suburb gets devoured by an amorphous, creeping force that no one fully understands until it's far too late. The Blob reflected Cold War fear of infiltration, and Stranger Things updates that to a fear of emotional and cultural decay, corruption, capitalism, and detachment spreading like slime. And as always, the adults are useless, leaving the kids to deal with the problem. Of course, again, it's not just horror homages this season. The other half of the story has two major influences proudly on display: the Terminator and Red Dawn. Throughout the season, Hopper's hunted by Grigori, a silent, unstoppable Russian enforcer who may as well have just been built by Skynet. The guy's basically the T-800. He barely speaks, he shrugs off damage like it's nothing, and he pursues Hopper with this cold, relentless precision. Even his final showdown in the underground base echoes the Terminator's factory finale, right down to the crushing machinery that ends him. And then we've got Red Dawn, where Soviet troops invade a small Colorado town. In Stranger Things Season 3, we've got Soviet scientists invading Hawkins literally from underneath, setting up shop under the Starcourt Mall to weaponize the Upside Down. Both stories center on teenagers who have to step up when the adults obviously won't or can't. The Wolverines fought off Russian soldiers, and Dustin, Steve, and Robin have to infiltrate a secret Russian base. Just, this time around in awesome Scoops Ahoy sailor uniforms. And yes, before you say anything, I did wear a Scoops Ahoy costume for Halloween back in 2018. Quick PSA, it only looks good if you're Joe Keery. Both Red Dawn and Stranger Things 3 capture the Cold War fear of losing American values. In Red Dawn, the threat's overt. It's soldiers with guns. In Stranger Things, it's covert. Scientists with lasers. And guns. The Duffer Brothers are taking a lot of time and effort in Season 3 to riff on just how much of the 80s cinematic landscape was directly about Red Scare paranoia. Season 4. After the mixed, but still relatively positive by Stranger Things standards, reception of Stranger Things 3, combined with the COVID-19 pandemic, the Duffer Brothers have been vocal about how they used their extended time off between seasons 3 and 4 to go back to the basics. They focused on fleshing out what they wanted going forward, and figuring out where they saw everything ending, and I think that's a big reason why Season 4 is not only a triumph of filmmaking and the best season out of all of them, but also a much more focused narrative in terms of influences. Everyone realized that Stranger Things 3 was oversaturated with cinematic references, and the show had become the thing that everyone accused it of being in the first place: simple nostalgia bait. For Season 4, they clearly went back to the drawing board and found a way to tighten the focus on films that truly matched the story they wanted to tell going forward. After 25 episodes pulling from countless pieces from cinema's past, what was left for the Duffers to mine from? Well, one of the biggest cash cows of that decade, and one of the defining genres most associated with the 1980s that they hadn't fully embraced yet, was the slasher genre. Stranger Things 4 focuses hard on crafting a love letter to one of the most recognizable faces of that genre with the introduction of the show's ultimate villain, Vecna, also known as Henry Creel or One, a very overt reinterpretation of Robert Englund's Freddy Krueger. Vecna isn't just inspired by Freddy Krueger, he is a modern reinterpretation of him, and the season builds its entire visual and emotional core around the same ideas of guilt, trauma, and the inescapability of the past. Freddy Krueger and Vecna both weaponize the mind. They don't attack you physically at first, but psychologically. Freddy kills you in your dreams, where Vecna kills you through visions, pulling his victims into a hallucinatory state that works essentially as dreams before murdering his victims in horrific fashion. Vecna pulls his victims into a completely different world, where he controls everything and manipulates these innocent and damaged victims into believing that they can't get away. He also happens to choose high schoolers, which was Freddy's favorite flavor of victim as well. Both are supernatural predators who invade the private spaces of your subconscious. In Elm Street, the dream world acts as a reflection of the victim's personal fears and repressed trauma. In Stranger Things Season 4, Vecna's mind layer is a psychic manifestation of the person's trauma and guilt. I mean, why do you think Vecna impersonates Max's family? He pretends to be people that Max has a complicated relationship with, only to then berate her with her insecurities from the mouth of the people she feels those things about. It's not a mistake that Vecna waits to confront Max until she's sitting at Billy's grave, and then appears as a manifestation of Billy himself, spouting off all of her deepest, darkest feelings to her in an attempt to psychologically break her down.
That is why you feel such guilt. Why you hide from your friends. Why you hide from the world. And why, late at night, you have sometimes wished to follow me.
He feeds on pain, drawing power from unresolved emotional wounds. Freddy and Vecna both prey on people already dealing with internal traumas, which makes them much more susceptible to their game. Though a very big distinction here is that Vecna doesn't seem to have a single ounce of humor in him, unlike Krueger, who even in his earliest, meanest incarnations still found time to drop a one-liner.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
Both stories are fundamentally about guilt and repression. In A Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy is the physical embodiment of a community's guilt. The parents who burned him alive tried to bury their sins, and their children end up inheriting that punishment. In Stranger Things Season 4, Henry Creel represents repressed trauma and buried guilt. His victims, Chrissy, Fred, Patrick, Max, are all haunted by things they cannot forgive themselves for. Unlike Season 1's purely alien antagonist in the Demogorgon, Vecna has a backstory, just like Freddy. Freddy Krueger was once a man who's now a demon fueled by vengeance. Henry Creel was once a boy who's now a psychic serial killer fueled by vengeance. Both began as human evil, amplified by some sort of supernatural power, suggesting that the real horror doesn't come from monsters, but from what humans are capable of doing when they lose empathy. Freddy Krueger and Henry Creel, while clearly wronged by the people in their communities, both had an internal darkness that was there from the start, regardless of what ended up happening to them. Visually, the Duffers pull heavily from Elm Street's dream sequences, especially the first and third films. The floating victims from Vecna and Stranger Things 4 seem to me a clear reinterpretation of Tina's ceiling murder from the first Nightmare film that kicked off the series. Also, the warped red-tinted mind layer thing mirrors the industrial boiler room hellscapes of where Freddy resides. The slow transitions from normal environments to nightmare states, the flickering lights, the clocks chiming, the walls decaying, it's all straight out of Wes Craven's visual playbook. Even Vecna's voice distortion and heavy breathing are designed to sound like Freddy's mix of human and demonic tones. And if you still need convincing at this point, look no further than Robert Englund's inclusion as Victor Creel. If that isn't making it crystal clear for you, I don't know what will. They literally made Robert Englund Vecna's father. The metaphor here is clear. Growing up inevitably requires facing your fears and unresolved pain, manifested in a metaphorical sense as the villains of this show and those movies. You can't hide from them forever, and the longer you repress, the more destructive they become. Both Freddy and Vecna are literalized versions of that psychological truth. The monsters exist because the teen's emotional wounds haven't been confronted. Conquering the nightmare becomes kind of a rite of passage, and the real horror is what happens when you don't. But like all Stranger Things seasons, Season 4 isn't just about the teenagers of Hawkins. The other major plotline follows Hopper's escape from that crazy Russian prison. And the whole prison subplot, the Duffers have pretty explicitly said, is inspired by 1963's The Great Escape. Hopper and his fellow POWs embody ordinary people standing up to a powerful and oppressive system. Their captivity highlights ingenuity, resilience, and the human will to survive under extreme pressure. David Harbour even told the New York Times that The Great Escape, along with Alien 3, which is the prison one, informed his season-long arc here. And of course, the show is obviously filled with other cinematic nods as well. Eleven's telekinetic high school struggles echo Stephen King's Carrie, showing the destructive power of an adolescent person with superpowers being bullied all the time. And the season's cliffhanger is a tonal homage to The Empire Strikes Back, which is the best Star Wars film, by the way, but that's a different video, which Matt Duffer said they studied super closely in an attempt to raise the stakes heading into season 5. Altogether, season 4 is a much tighter, more deliberate love letter to the horror and sci-fi films that shaped the show. From Elm Street to The Great Escape to Carrie to Star Wars, it's blending all of them into a season that's terrifying, thematically resonant, and emotionally satisfying. I love it. Since 2016, we've been living in a media landscape obsessed with selling us an idealized version of the past, and Stranger Things is undoubtedly to blame for that. But honestly, I don't think the show itself deserves all the blame for the greed and laziness of everything that came after it. Stranger Things isn't pretending to be original. It wears its influences proudly on its sleeves. The Duffer Brothers are basically saying, yeah, we stole this, it's awesome, and we made it ours. And who knows, maybe now that Stranger Things is wrapping up, it marks the end of this nostalgia era and the start of something new. Maybe it opens the door for the next generation to actually take risks again, to try something original. And if history's taught us anything, it's that in 40 years, someone else will probably just steal that too. And that's everything I've got on the inspirations that form the first 4 seasons of Stranger Things. But please leave a comment down below if I missed something and let me know what you think season 5 is going to rip off. And also leave a like on the video if you enjoy what I do here. It really helps let YouTube know it needs to show my videos to more wonderful people like you. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to Nostalgia Mode for more entertainment related videos. Until next time, bye.